So we really need to talk because Donald Trump has created an environment where someone who was 24, a transgender man, was tortured for more than a month before his death. And I think this particular story was talked about because it was so heinous, but there are thousands of stories like this, some that may not end up in murder, but Donald Trump is creating an environment where transgender people are seen less than in the United States of America through his policies. He's recognizing people as only men and women. He's making people who have changed their passport to match their gender identity have to change it back. He's denying transgender people from changing their passport. He's made it so that trans women are being moved into men's prisons. All of this does not help anyone. It just is intended to hurt and to other. And so for today, I brought on my friend Peppermint, who is a drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race. She's trans. She was also on the hit TV show The Traitors, and she's here today to share some insight on what it means to be transgender in Trump's America. I hope you listen to this interview because I think it's really important. Peppermint, thank you so much for joining the channel, the show. And, I just really am grateful that you have given us time to just get some insight about, frankly, what it means to be a trans person in America right now. And I know that you can't speak for every trans person in America, but certainly you're closer to it than pretty much anyone who will be watching this is. And yeah, let's just start it off with that because I saw there was a viral video earlier this week of a woman whose passport got switched. I'm sure you saw this from female to male. And it was just basically her reaction about it. And it just all to me seems so petty and cruel, all of it. But what is this like on your end?
I think you're talking about the Hunter Schafer video. She's an actress. She was on, she's a famous actress. And she's unfortunately not the first person, probably not the last, who's gotten swept up in the State Department's recent sort of follow through on the Trump administration's declaration, executive order that there are only two genders, which means a whole lot of rules that are confusing and I would say draconian, but certainly don't seem that well thought out in all areas, including in the area of passports and identification. And the website says if you have an X gender marker, then we will change it. Now, I think that's egregious in and of itself because these people who do have an X gender marker, they didn't like illegally scratch it on there. Like this was something that was supported by their government. And, in order to get a passport that says X or F or whatever it needs, the rest of your documents have to be in line as well. And so people spend time, energy, money hiring lawyers and to get their driver's license because you can't just get a passport out of thin air. You need a license, you need a birth certificate, you need all these other supporting documents. And so there's a lot of work. If anybody that's ever been to the DMV knows it's a pain just to get a driver's license, let alone a driver's license, social security card, passport, birth certificate, all those things lined up to say the same thing. It's important that those things match for identification purposes. If you go, I would imagine if you try to go and cash a check or get into the airport, or there's a million reasons why having your information match is important. I mean, that's kind of the point of an ID that you show people. And anyway, the website just says X, but really they're apparently targeting people who are just trans, regardless of what it says. They are, basically in some cases revoking people's passports. It's not consistent. Some people are losing their passports across the board. Some people
Mm.
are having them returned with the wrong gender marker, with a brand new gender marker, one that is different than the one that they've held and the one that supports who they are. Certainly, getting back a gender marker that doesn't match the appearance of the person is definitely what's happening. There's going to be a lot of trans men, ma- some who are very macho looking just like you with beards and muscles, who are now going to have the gender marker F, and lots of trans femmes and women who do fit into what people would say is a woman by how they look, but will have the gender marker M. And that can cause a lot of not only confusion, but then, just unnecessary trouble. So what you
Well,
said, it is cruel. It is.
it's cruel, but it also thinks to me it feels pointless. Like who is this helping? Who is it helping? It doesn't seem like even on their own side, it doesn't help anyone to like do something like this because the only person that passport is supposed to identify is the person who's holding it. And if the person who's holding it says, I identify as a female, why is my what thing I don't understand is conservatives are like, get government out of my life, get government out of my life. But then they're so specific about the things they want government to intervene on. And with something like this, more than anything else, it just feels like it is a victimless. It's not even crime, but it just feels like it's victimless. It's only helping someone, right? I mean, am I reading this wrong? Like I don't understand where they're coming from. It's
On
it's
the
it's just to
surface,
it's just to attack, essentially.
yes. Immediately on the surface, and because I think there's a lot of people who don't care what someone's passport says. Even people who are all up in arms about trans women in sports and trans women in the bathroom. But I mean, I would say the same thing about the bathroom. Who cares who's peeing if they're peeing and washing their hands and leaving? And it's not, the trans women are not in their rape. There's not an epidemic of like rapes in the bathroom. So to that regard, you're right. And I was shocked to hear this happen because for the most part, I'm pretty privileged. Have I have access to right now, I have access to healthcare and I have access to my own personal things and safety. And I thought as long as I had those, then I would be fine. Of course, it's important for me for other people. It's important to me that other people are safe and secure and have equal rights. But even when some other rights are being stripped away, like I can't join sports. I'm not an athlete, so that hasn't hit home. But something that's sweeping like passport access, which um, most people don't already have a passport. A lot of people do. People who obviously travel definitely have a passport. But I believe that the federal government in the future, regardless of this administration, is probably going to start requiring passports over things like state IDs in the future. That's just something I'm guessing. And if that happens, then this will matter a whole lot more than it seems to now. Because essentially, not having a valid ID in some situations is already seen as breaking the law. And not having a valid ID also, well, first of all, they could make any new law or any declaration in the future that suddenly says if you have green eyes, then you're breaking the law. So, like, they can make up anything they want in the future. But not having a valid ID makes it very difficult for trans people to do any other thing, to hold a job, to have a job, to get a job, to earn money, to spend money, to travel. There's so many things you can't do without a valid ID.
And just thinking out loud here, isn't it also like a safety thing? Like, because listen, I'm gay. I'm gay. One of the benefits. Oh my God, I'm gay. but something that I was privileged in is that I could come out when I wanted to. No one, and I'm constantly coming out. People don't think I'm gay until they find out I'm gay. There probably be people watching this be like, he is gay,
Oh my
so
God.
but I imagine it's a matter of safety too, because there's a lot of trans people who you would never know, and it's their right to keep that, if they want to keep that private, fine. But what they're doing now is putting a target on people who look female, but then have the M on their ID. And that to me is a part of this I don't think is really talked about enough. That they're outing people when necessarily it might be unsafe for them to do so.
It automatically exposes people to whatever whoever you're encountering, it automatically exposes us and puts us at the whim of the prejudices of the person, who
Mhm.
you're dealing with. If you are dealing with somebody who has been going on and on about how much they hate trans people and how they're this and that, and then you present an ID that doesn't match, they could likely they are probably well within their right to do whatever is in their power, especially if you're handing your passport to somebody, it's probably while they're at work. And so they're within their right to exercise their discretion to either let you in or out of that place or not. And so if that is a bar, fine, I'll go to a different bar. But if that is the country, then that is a very different thing. Furthermore, it does mark you as someone who should it positions you as a perpetrator, instantly lying, and someone who's not to be trusted, someone who's to be
Mm.
investigated and not to be trusted. And yes, it does open you up for violence when people, trans folks, but specifically trans women and definitely trans women of color. One of the things we haven't talked about is the high rate of murder that trans women of color fall victim to, usually at the hands of our romantic partners and intimate partners. But you know it's akin to, it's like the new gay bashing is killing trans women, and the thing is no one's making movies about it, no one's talking about it, and instead they're talking
There was
about
this
how they were all rapists.
there was just a story, a terrible story. I believe it was upstate New
Mm-hmm.
York. It was a
Mm-hmm.
trans man
Mm-hmm.
who was brutally what is the word,
Tortured.
tortured,
Mm-hmm.
and then found dead. And these are stories that are underreported. If you hear about them all, the only reason we heard about that one was because it was so brutal. It was so brutal.
And
But
it went
I
on
don't
for
know.
weeks apparently.
Yes, and it's awful. But this is, but it is actions like this that creates an environment of tolerance where those men felt like that was like that person they were doing that to was below the level of
Of
pet
human.
of
Yeah.
human, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
like you wouldn't even like imagine if you did that, doing that to a dog. You just wouldn't do it to anything. But like to a person. So so yeah, I mean, I guess my question for you is like how is it feel it's I mean, how is it feeling in Trump's
it feels
America?
like It feels terrible. It feels like I am a part of a group. It doesn't feel new. That's the first thing. I've been a
Mm,
part this, even though we wake up every day to a new executive order in the headlines, like since January, we've been subject for people's scrutiny and criticism well before this. Whenever, for the most part, whenever you would hear any mention of trans people in mainstream, especially in news and politics, for the most part, it was very negative, and certainly increasingly since 2016, since Trump's first presidency. So many of the stories about the trans community, especially during his presidency, have been about how the transgender military ban was one of the very first things he did in his first presidency, and then since then um, the tone has shifted away from being supportive of LGBT people in general, but especially trans people. It feels horrible. I feel like I'm not safe here. I feel like I'm less likely to be supported if I'm just brutally attacked on the street. I feel like I could easily be detained in a way that I feel is unjust. If I'm literally just going to the store and going to a place and traveling and hand someone my document, I could get like just detained for no just detained and shipped out of the country, deported. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and I say this all the time, and I mean this, is that certainly the LGBTQ plus community, I think, is one of the most intersectional communities that exist in humanity. Meaning we are every race, every gender, every religion, every sexuality, every nationality, every political party. We are every single classification there are LGBT people in. They may or may
Mm-hmm.
not be out, but we are there. That
Mm-hmm.
includes trans people. And when it comes to the some of the most important pillars of a modern developed society that you need, access to housing, healthcare, employment, and physical safety, which is also kind of connected to healthcare. All four of those things are being attacked by the Trump administration for different groups, but especially for trans people. One thing that folks don't understand is that trans people, because of the way that we're situated in Western culture, to be trans and to move through your gender transition, your medical transition, your social transition, and to be acclimated in society means that you have to deal with lots of different areas or departments. They kind of crisscross things that have to do
Mm-hmm.
with gender, things that have to do with, socioeconomic status. These things are all connected. Trans people are a very, very small group of people, very, very vulnerable group of people because we don't have a lot of allies or people speaking up for us. But we are also a very key group of people to target because we are like the bullseye of American civil rights. We have our group, the trans community has the protections that we've gained so far, the civil protections that we have cross gender and sexuality, cross race, class, socioeconomic status. So, kind of shooting the trans bullseye in the heart means that we now have access to change people's passports who aren't trans. And passports are connected to how people can move and travel. Immigration, that's connected. We
Mm-hmm.
can suddenly, affect people's ability to travel in and out of this country in a way that they were not expecting. Getting blocking trans people, trans Americans access to make their own decisions about their own healthcare is the back door to bodily autonomy. That is making healthcare decisions for yourself. Obviously, abortion, it starts with that, but there's other things that, what medications you can take, what other things you can do, what decisions you can make for your body. Stopping trans Americans from doing that gives them
I, I see what you're
access to
saying. So
that.
it's like a backdoor. So like attacking
Mhm.
the trans community is a backdoor to like
To a lot of
going
different
after
issues.
other people's civil rights. Is that what you mean? So
100%.
so that's really an interesting. I mean, there is of course that saying like first they came to the trans people and no one spoke up, and then they blah blah, blah and then they came for me.
Mhm.
So I get that. I just cannot get over how like how I mean, this is just baseline for me in America. If you are doing nothing wrong and you are not hurting anyone else and you are not hurting yourself, just stay the fuck away. Just stay out of it, you know? And that is to me like it seems to me pretty baseline American philosophy. Like, leave me the fuck alone. Let me just live my
Used to
life.
be.
You know? So I just am like, leave fucking trans people alone. Let them like trans people are allowed to exist. Trans people are allowed to if you don't want to be trans, if you're a man, you don't want to dress up as a woman, fine. Don't. No one's making you. But like trans people existing does not does not imply that they are trying to coerce anyone to live the way you want to live. It's just trans people
Mhm.
existing are just trying to get through this hard fucking life that we are all trying to get through. They're trying to get through it the same goddamn way we all are, with dignity, with respect, and ideally some happiness. So it's just so, I mean, I don't know what else to do about it. I mean, I guess that's why I wanted to talk to you because I hate injustice. I hate it. I'm allergic to it. And it feels like what's happening is just so unfair is not even the right word. It's just so baseline not right. It's not right. And our
Mhm.
government is there to help, not to hurt. So I don't want to put the pressure on you to tell anyone how we can fix this. I think this is a bigger problem than we can solve in the next 10 minutes. But I do think telling stories about what's happening, making it personal, like you said, this is the trans community is small, and one of the benefits of the LGBTQ movement, especially the gay rights movement, was that there are many of us and we were everywhere. And so eventually we started coming out, and people said, "Oh, I guess Keith's gay, but he's kind of normal, he's just a gay guy, and we were able to get acceptance that way. Not everyone's going to know a trans person, you know,
Most
and
people
if they
don't.
do, and if they do, they might not even know they're trans, because it's not anyone's business to share. But I
Yeah.
guess what I'm hoping to do a little bit is just say, like, trans people are just like any other American, just trying to like get through life, and certainly we should be uplifting the people who are most vulnerable in our communities, not bashing them. If I can, I have a video here. This guy's Rob Sand. He is Iowa state auditor. He is the only state elected official who's a Democrat in Iowa. And I just saw this today. I wanted to share it with you.
Protect him at all costs.
So let's watch this.
Lives should not be pawns in a political game.
Hold on. Let's do that again. Okay. So he's talking to trans people here.
Wrong. You don't deserve this. Your lives should not be pawns in a political game. And from my perspective, on my own faith, Jesus came to comfort the afflicted and also to afflict the comfortable. When the people who I believe are very comfortable afflicting you, someday we'll have to deal with that.
I like that message, because that's what Christianity is about. I hope more Democrats talk like this. Trans people deserve to be protected, and especially if someone is, if you see someone get bullied on the street, I inherently want to just like stop it, and so I love what Rob said there, because I think Christianity has been so deeply perverted in this country. And I'm not a Christian, I don't pretend to know anything about the Bible, but that to me just makes sense. What he said there makes sense. Baseline, Bible or not, it makes sense. And I hope more Democrats adopt it. And I hope more Christians look at what they're supporting versus what their religion tells them how they should be acting.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, trans people are like everyone else. I think that's important for people to know. And although most people don't know someone who's trans, I completely understand the the confusion and feeling like we're so strange and different and bizarre. And I guess people are obviously buying into a lot of the hype that they're hearing. When you hear conversations, whenever you hear about trans anything these days, it's usually someone who's not trans talking about us and what we should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed to do. And it's not usually hearing from us. So I really am grateful that you brought me on. And I just, with regard to so many of these things, I just honestly, as wild as it sounds, and I hope that people really do the research on this, I think a lot of this stems from people using their own moral compass to judge whether or not they think a trans person should have the right to express themselves the way that they want to, visually, sexually, physically, all these different things. And there's so many things that people disagree with that have to do with trans people. It's like it's almost comical. But just know that every single restriction that's being placed on trans people also applies to everyone else. If you're talking about gender affirming care, there really is no gender affirming care that cisgender people don't get as well. We use the same surgeries, the same doctors, the same medications.
Taking testosterone.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so eventually it's going to come to outlawing hormone therapy, outlawing testosterone, outlawing, estrogen, that affects more than just trans people. It'll be in the name of trans people, but before you know it, it may hit closer to home. And if you have someone in your family who comes out to you as trans, you would want them to have all the same protections that every other person has. And right now, those are being stripped away. I was terrified when I was faced with the thought that I might lose my health care because currently I'm on Medicaid. And I know it's not just for trans people. Nobody wants to lose their health care.
Wait, why?
And
Are they trying to take trans people's health care from Medicaid?
yes.
I don't know. I truly
Okay.
don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. So first, first thing they did was they villainized DEI. And they are going through and basically they announced any state, any program, any federal program that that receives any school, any sports team, any subject that receives federal funding is now subject to scrutiny and at risk for losing that federal funding if they have anything related to DEI, which encompasses Black history, women's studies, anything having to do with trans, anything, which includes, healthcare. If a hospital not only performs gender affirming care for minors, people like an 18-year-old, but also provides hormones to someone whose now passport says the wrong thing, that's suddenly a signal that you are doing the wrong thing and engaging in DEI, whatever that means. And, that now you could lose your federal funding.
I understand now. So like, there's just, there is like, if they wanted to go down that road, it's very easy for them to do it.
But they already are. There's hospitals that have preemptively shut down their program, basically saying we won't see trans patients anymore. 2 hospitals have preemptively done that. One in New York, famously, and so it's already happening. It doesn't have to because it was an executive order and it hasn't gone through the legal system. Not the way I have much faith in that, but it is happening already. A lot of industries, organizations, and healthcare providers are preemptively shutting down their programs, which is what they want. If they could do this without having to like waste time in court, and people are just like, oh, we hate trans people now, then great. But they always have you will lose your federal funding, to hang over people's heads. What happens after that? Maybe the hospital will sue if they lose their federal. I don't know. But right now we are losing access. That's on the individual level, like forcing people to make the decision to shut out trans people so that they can in honor of self-preservation. But also, they're doing it from the top down with things like the passports, with things like in the military saying we're going to investigate and root out trans people to detach them or separate them from the military, which separates them from the VA. It separates them from their healthcare. It separates them from so many things. And so this is a systematic
all right. Well,
targeting.
I like I said, I don't think the point of this is to have solutions, but I do think that is just to have awareness. And I think you cannot know how to fix the problem if you don't know the problem exists. So
what it is.
I just want as many people to know what's going on as possible. And I very much appreciate you just coming on. And I know it's not easy to talk about this sort of stuff. And certainly I just am very struck by how there's strength behind you and how you speak, and there's strength in your vulnerability and also your ability to laugh. Still, I don't let, I'm so glad that hasn't been taken away from you. Don't let them fucking take that from you. And I'm here for you. I'm here for the trans community 100%.
Thank you so much.
And and where can folks find you? Where would you like them to find you? I will link to wherever you want.
Thank you. They can just find me on my social media, Peppermint247, which is the same on all platforms. And they can find me watching The Keith Edwards Show.